the newspapers for us. Lauren, you're starting off with the US election, aren't you? But you look at it from a French perspective to start with.
Well, of course, the whole world, Stuart, is watching this election, and France is no exception. Starting with French paper Libération, which headlines on the title La Maison Flanche, a play on word on La Maison Blanche, the White House, except the house is flinching. Le Figaro, another French daily, is showing us both candidates on his front page with the simple question, who? And it's a simple but effective headline, as one word and one picture are really enough for the reader to know exactly what it's about. And finally, for another French paper, L'Opinion, this close race represents a worst-case scenario for the U.S., one which will exacerbate divisions and tensions, plunging the country into potentially a massive democratic crisis. The paper also published this cartoon of Donald Trump as a hot dog, sandwiched between the East and West Coast buns, both stamped with a Democratic seal, and calling the whole thing America's classic, suggesting that once again the coasts have gone blue while the middle has largely stayed red.
Yeah, Donald Trump was a hot dog. There you go. Let's move to the UK for this next one. The papers there have been headlining as well, of course, on the US electoral race.
Well, that's right. Let's start by looking at The Independent with this headline, really powerful picture of a backlit Donald Trump with the title America Kept in the Dark, which is really what's still happening at the moment. On a lighter note, moving on to tabloid The Daily Mail, which asks whether Donald has been trumped and says the president is threatening to plunge the U.S. Into a constitutional crisis by disputing these results. And finally, the Daily Mirror, another tabloid, is even more critical of the president, calling him a liar and a cheat until the bitter end of an ugly election finale.
Well, the election, of course, has turned into a marathon of sorts, with votes still being counted as we speak. What are the newspapers in the US saying about that, Laurent?
Well, the general atmosphere in the U.S. is summed up quite nicely by this USA Today headline, a tense nation wondering what comes next. Now, the Los Angeles Times published an interesting opinion piece which argues that no matter the outcome, Trump has already won this election. And the author argues that Trump has managed to divide us in ways that will stay long after he has left office, which is already a victory for him, and has shown that his election in 2016 was not a fluke, but rather a symptom of a much greater divide in American society. And it's an argument we see a lot of in the papers today, but I did manage to find one moderately positive article in the Washington Post, an opinion piece which tells us a somewhat happy ending is in sight. Now, the article doesn't start off too positively, saying the current situation has left the American project more divided and more battered than at any time in 160 years. However, according to the author, unlike 1860, 160 years ago, this is not a constitutional crisis, as the institutions have not buckled. The article argues that despite those recent controversies surrounding appointments, the Supreme Court is not a political body, and that we should let it do its job, and that Donald Trump, if he seizes the court to challenge the results, could be very disappointed at the end. Now, some might call this belief a bit naive, maybe, but I think we can all do with a bit of positivity and optimism.
Certainly could do at the moment. Let's carry that positivity on. We have the hot dog Trump. Political cartoons, are they positive? I'm not sure if they are. Some of them are.
Well, not so much. Speaking of a divided America, we can see this cartoon by the Washington Post showing the USA letters crumbling, with Uncle Sam saying it's so many cracks, and a bunch of Americans trying to fill everything up with cement and clean it all up. Another cartoon showing Donald Trump clinging to power, claiming victory despite being stuck to a dirty sock that's about to get tossed away. And finally, we have this great cartoon by The Independent's Dave Brown, which is a play on the saying, it ain't over till the fat lady sings, pardon the expression, except in this case, well, the lady in question has been kidnapped by Donald Trump, who's taken her place and is singing Hail to the Thief.
I wonder what that would actually sound like. I think we're all waiting to see what comes next, aren't we? Which brings us to the last article that Lauren has picked out for us.
Well, it's a piece by Guardian columnist Marina Hyde, and it's sprinkled with bits of delicious satire in there, calling the article America, What the Hell Happens Now? I've selected a few quotes from the article for you. The author is telling us, for instance, that expectations have fallen so low that anything short of gun-toting Klansmen firing celebratory rounds into the air would be considered a victory for the Democrats. and going on to describe Biden's best case scenario as a narrow win with a majority Republican Senate, which would allow him, and I quote, to accomplish even less than he has during his campaign. And even in the event of a Biden win, the author says we're likely to face months of Trump claiming the election was stolen. And she likens it to winning the World Cup in November, only to have the losing captain use it as a toilet for 3 months before finally handing it over in January. A beautiful image. And the article concludes by telling us to rule nothing out except perhaps moral optimism.
Some very nice analogies there from Marina Hyde in The Guardian. Thanks very much, Laurent. Laurent Bestecker there with the papers on France 24. And if you are just joining us here on France 24, perhaps you've just woken up if you're in Europe, we'll bring you all the very latest after the break, let you know exactly where we are with the election. It rumbles on France 24.